Welcome to the Mary Potter podcast.
Yes, indeed. It's time for another weekly magical probe.
Get ready to dive into the fascinating world of wizarding flash fiction. This week, we've got two really captivating tales. They explore, well, kind of these shadowy corners where magic bumps right up against the mundane.
Those intersections can be so intriguing, can't they?
Yeah, totally. You guys sent in some really intriguing stories, and we've kind of extracted the most compelling bits, the real nuggets, you know?
A bit of a magical distillation, if you will.
Exactly. Prepare for urban grit, psychic echoes, scientific skepticism, and we've even got some spectral mysteries, all designed to, well, hopefully spark your curiosity without, completely overwhelming you.
A delightful balance of magic and intrigue.
So, listeners, if you're enjoying these magical probes into the world of wizarding flash fiction, don't forget to rate and follow the show. That way you won't miss out on any of these captivating stories on the Mary Potter podcast.
And be sure to send in your own stories as well. You never know, we might feature yours on a future episode.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Our first flash fiction story this week is titled The Warlock's Wife.
Ooh, that title already has me hooked.
Right. It's got that classic noir vibe. So picture this. You're in a city, drenched in shadows. You know, the kind of place where, secrets cling to the brick walls and even the air itself feels heavy.
A place where magic might lurk in every dimly lit alleyway.
Exactly. Think classic noir film, but, with this sort of hidden current of magic, pulsing beneath the surface.
A magical undercurrent waiting to be tapped into.
Now, imagine dropping a character with actual psychic abilities right into that kind of landscape. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, what immediately grabs my attention is how the story defines this psychic ability. It's not presented as these crystal clear visions, but as something called echoes.
Echoes.
Yeah, these lingering imprints of past events, but imprinted on objects.
No, that's pretty interesting.
It is, isn't it? It's a much more tactile and I'd say a much more ambiguous form of perception. So instead of just knowing, he's sort of sensing these remnants, fragments of what was.
Ooh, so it's less like watching a security camera and more like feeling the residue on a doorknob after someone's used it?
Precisely.
Yeah.
The story gives us these really vivid examples to kind of illustrate it, too. Like the clammy hands on a stolen necklace, the echo of the thief's fear, or there's another one, the flash of rage radiating from a bloodstained poker chip.
Wow, those are really evocative.
Right. And they make you stop and think about how much unseen history could be clinging to basically everything around us, even in our own very mundane, non-magical lives.
Yeah. But thinking about it as like a detective's tool, though, I mean, relying on these fragmented impressions, that's got to be way tougher than having a straightforward vision, right?
Absolutely. It definitely raises the stakes for even the most seemingly simple tasks, like even just trying to find, I don't know, a lost cat.
A lost cat. Huh.
Yeah. You see, RPI, he's not getting this clear mental image of where the cat might be hiding. He's potentially having to sift through layers of totally unrelated sensory input,
Yep.
Echoes from people who've touched that same doorknob, walked down that same street. The cat's echoes might be lost in the noise.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
Potentially misleading too, of course.
Right. Okay, so we've got our echo-sensing PI trying to navigate this world. What comes next?
Well, in true noir fashion, a dame walks into his office, all curves and desperation. The story practically lets you see the cigarette smoke swirling around her, hear the click of her heels on the worn floorboards.
Oh, classic.
Totally classic. But even within that familiar archetype, there are these subtle hints that something's off, something's not quite right. The story mentions a whiff of lavender that seems out of place in his dingy office, and this strange chill clinging to her, almost as if she's just walked out of a freezer.
Ooh, I get chills just thinking about it.
The story even describes it as a chill left over from a working gone wrong. So right away, we're getting these little clues that this isn't just your average missing person case.
So it's not just the dame's perfume that's setting off alarm bells?
No, definitely not. The lavender and the chill, they aren't just there for atmosphere. They're like these little breadcrumbs hinting at the magical reality that's kind of underlying this whole situation. They're suggesting a world where even everyday interactions, even a simple meeting, can carry this sort of magical residue.
Okay, I'm hooked. So tell me, what's the story behind this missing person? Why has this mysterious dame sought out RPI?
Well, as it turns out, the missing husband isn't just any guy who decided to skip town. He's a warlock. And from what the story hints at, not exactly the most, shall we say, ethical practitioner of the magical arts.
A warlock with a shady past, huh?
Exactly. And that's where our PI's echo-sensing abilities come in. He starts following these faint magical traces, these whispers left behind by the missing warlock. But what's fascinating is that his instincts don't lead him to, like, witnesses or physical evidence in the traditional sense. They take him to these strange pockets of magical, well, almost like magical fallout.
What do you mean magical fallout?
The story describes things like moonlight that's bent at an unnatural angle in a particular alleyway, or this acrid, almost sulfurous smell in an abandoned lot that, speaks of a summoning gone wrong. It's as though the magic has left these almost tangible imprints on the environment itself.
So it's not just about sensing emotions. He's picking up on these distortions in reality caused by the warlock's magic.
Exactly. And those details, they kind of, well, they suggest something really interesting about the nature of magic in this world, don't they?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if moonlight can be literally bent, if a failed summoning can leave this lingering stench,
Mm-hmm.
it suggests that magic isn't just this ethereal, invisible force. It's something that interacts with and even affects the physical world. Like it leaves a mark,
Yeah.
a footprint.
Yeah, like some kind of magical radiation.
In a way, yes. And then this story kind of throws this curveball. It reveals that the warlock hasn't just disappeared. He's been vanished by some really powerful magic, wiped from existence almost. But even then, even with that level of magical power, there are these almost imperceptible traces left behind.
These echoes, you mean?
Yeah, these subtle magical fingerprints that only someone like our PI, someone sensitive to these echoes, could even hope to detect.
Okay, so we've got this missing, or rather vanished warlock, a city full of magical fallout, and a PI who can sense it all. Where does the story go from there?
Well, this is where it takes a really dark turn. Our PI, who's already viewed with suspicion because of his abilities, operating on the fringes of society, well, he suddenly becomes the prime suspect in a murder.
A murder? But we're talking about a warlock who's been vanished by magic. How does that connect to a mundane crime?
Well, the murder itself is anything but mundane. It's described as being magically infused, as if the very act of killing was somehow woven with dark sorcery. But here's the thing. Our PI, he gets framed for it.
Framed? By whom?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right.
The story mentions this, like grainy security footage, just a fleeting glimpse of his face near the scene of the crime. And it really highlights the vast gulf in understanding between the regular police force who are aware of magic, sure, but they don't really grasp the true depths of it, how it works. And then on the other side, you have the actual supernatural nature of this crime.
They see a weird murder and they want to pin it on the convenient freak with the psychic abilities.
Exactly. It plays into that very human tendency, doesn't it, to want a simple explanation, to want to blame the outsider, the person who doesn't quite fit in.
But something tells me it's not that simple.
You'd be absolutely right. You see, this grieving widow, the dame who hired the PI, well, she's not exactly who she appears to be.
What do you mean?
Turns out she's a warlock herself, a rival of her vanished husband. And she's been playing a very dangerous game, using the chaos of his disappearance as a cover to try and seize power for herself.
Wow, that's cold. But it also makes you think about, the whole power dynamic in this hidden magical world. If warlocks are turning on each other so readily,
Yeah.
What does that say about the nature of their society?
It definitely paints a picture of a world where alliances are, let's just say alliances are very fluid, very much based on self-interest. The story even has this great line, magic is a fickle mistress, allegiance thinner than smoke on a windless day.
That's pretty poetic for a gritty war story.
Right. But it gets the point across beautifully. This is a world of constant struggle for power, where everyone seems willing to exploit any weakness, any vulnerability to get ahead.
And our poor PI just got caught in the middle of it.
Exactly. And what's even worse, his own office, his supposed safe space, becomes this elaborate trap set by the dame. She's playing on his desperation to clear his name, using it against him.
So he's walking into a lion's den and he doesn't even know it.
In a way, yes. But you see, the dame made a crucial mistake. She underestimated the variability she was trying to exploit.
You mean his echo sense?
Precisely. His unique way of perceiving the world allows him to see, or rather, to sense, what others miss. And as he delves deeper into the case, he starts picking up on these subtle magical residues, these echoes that reveal the dame's true intentions.
So the echoes become clues.
In a way, yes. Like the
Fair.
story mentions this flicker on the security footage, the one they're using to frame him. And at first it seems like just a technical glitch, but our PI, he senses that it's something more, something deliberate.
What is it?
It's the echo of her glamour spell, the magic she used to create the illusion, to make it seem like he was at the scene. It's this clever little twist that shows how even magical deception can leave a trace, a kind of psychic signature.
So there's no such thing as a perfect crime, even in the magical world.
Especially in the magical world, perhaps. Because magic, as powerful as it can be, is still bound by certain rules, certain principles. And those principles, well, they can create echoes that a perceptive individual can learn to read.
So what happens? Does he confront the dame?
He does. But it's not some, formal duel or anything like that. It all goes down in this really grimy warehouse, which feels very appropriate, for this whole noir vibe the story's got going on.
And what's the dame up to in this warehouse?
Oh, she's in the middle of a ritual, a really dangerous one, designed to open some kind of interdimensional portal. She's not just trying to manipulate the magical underworld, she's trying to tap into something much bigger, much more dangerous.
So we're going from a missing person case to full-blown interdimensional shenanigans?
That's the beauty of flash fiction, isn't it? The way it can escalate so quickly, take these unexpected turns. And the story does a great job of contrasting, the PI's very mundane weapon, his trusty .38 caliber, with the absolutely monstrous being that the dame's ritual is summoning.
So it's basically good old-fashioned detective work versus raw otherworldly power. Who wins?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. You see, remember that stolen necklace from earlier? The one with the echo of the thief's fear?
Yeah, what about it?
Well, it turns out that clinging to that necklace wasn't just the thief's fear, but also whispered so faintly it was almost missed. A name. And that name, well, is the key to everything.
A name can be pretty powerful, especially in magical circles. What was this name?
It was the name of, let's just say, a very disgruntled ex-wife. And not just any ex-wife, but the ex-wife of the very demon the dame is trying to summon.
Wait, hold on. So we've got a demon, his angry ex-wife, a warlock trying to open a portal, and our poor PI caught in the crossfire.
You got it. The warehouse becomes the backdrop for this, the story calls it an interdimensional custody dispute, which I think is hilarious. But, it's also a brilliant way to kind of to put the previous conflict, the whole Warlock rivalry, into perspective.
Yeah, their little power struggle suddenly seems very insignificant compared to, a couple of interdimensional beings hashing out their issues.
Exactly. And of course, the climax is, suitably chaotic. The warehouse is basically wrecked, the portal explodes, and, nobody really knows what happened to the demon or his ex.
What about the dame? What happens to her?
She vanishes. Poof. Gone. Though knowing her ambition, I doubt that's the last we'll hear of her.
Well, she's probably got bigger problems to worry about than our PI now.
Right. And as for our PI, he survives, obviously. But he's left with more than just a trashed office. There's this lingering unease, this sense that he's been irrevocably touched by what he's encountered.
The story mentions that the mundane authorities, the police and firefighters, they chalk it all up to, gas leaks and faulty wiring.
Of course they do. Easier to blame the mundane than to face the truly inexplicable. But the tabloids, they have a field day, Rumors of demonic cults and interdimensional portals.
But only our PI, and perhaps the dame, if she's still out there, truly know what happened that night.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final line of the story. The PI, standing amidst the wreckage of his office, thinks to himself, echoes. They linger. And the city itself feels different to him now, somehow tainted, haunted by the magic that was unleashed. It's this really chilling thought that these breaches between worlds, these magical events, they leave scars. They might not be visible to everyone, but for those who can sense them, those who are sensitive to the echoes. Well, the world is never quite the same again.
That's a great note to end on. It really makes you think about, the hidden costs of magic, the unseen consequences. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be diving into our second flash fiction story, Ghost Hunter, which explores the paranormal in a completely different but equally fascinating way. Stay tuned.
This next one really delves into the fascinating clash between scientific skepticism and psychic sensitivity.
And it asks the question, can we truly measure the immeasurable? We'll be right back after this short break.
Don't go anywhere.
All right, welcome back to the Mary Potter podcast. We're still on our weekly magical probe, and it's time to dive into our second flash fiction story, Ghost Hunter.
Buckle up, everyone, because this one takes us on a journey into the very heart of the paranormal.
It sure does. And what makes the story so unique is its focus on this really, this pretty unlikely duo.
Unlikely, but oh, so compelling. We have Dr. Alex Harrison, a physicist.
And a very cynical one at that.
Indeed. Dr. Harrison is completely grounded in scientific methodology. He's all about, tangible evidence, measurable data.
EMF readers, hypersensitive microphones, those are his tools of the trade when it comes to investigating the paranormal.
He's not interested in ghost stories or spectral apparitions. He's looking for scientific explanations for these supposedly ghostly phenomena.
Faulty wiring, electromagnetic fluctuations, the power of suggestion, those are his go-to explanations.
He approaches the paranormal with a healthy dose of skepticism, determined to debunk the myths and legends. But then we have his partner in paranormal investigation, Talia.
And Talia is about as far from a cynical scientist as you can get. She's a psychic.
And a very gifted one, too. She believes in these emotional echoes, these lingering traces of intense human experiences that cling to certain places.
Like the frantic pulse of a forgotten hospital ward or the mournful silence of an ancient battlefield.
Exactly. She senses these remnants, these emotional imprints, and uses them to piece together the stories of the past. It's a very intuitive and empathetic approach to the paranormal, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. So we've got this really stark contrast, the analytical data-driven physicist versus the intuitive, emotionally connected psychic. What brings these two together?
Well, the story throws in this really interesting detail. They're working together because of a grant they received for their paranormal investigations. But there's a catch. The grant specifically requires a certain degree of theatricality.
So it's not enough for them to just do their research quietly. They need to put on a bit of a show.
Precisely. And that's what makes their partnership so intriguing. It's not just a clash of ideologies. It's also a clash of, let's say, professional ambitions.
They need each other to secure funding, even though their approaches are so radically different.
Exactly. And that pragmatic element adds this really interesting layer to their dynamic. It forces them to collaborate, to find some kind of common ground, even though their fundamental beliefs about the paranormal are completely at odds.
So where does their first investigation take them?
Well, as you might expect, it's a classic haunted location.
A creepy old mansion, perhaps.
You guessed it. A crumbling manor with a long history of strange and unexplained occurrences. And the story really emphasizes how their contrasting worldviews play out during this investigation.
How so?
Well, Talia's picking up on all these signs of restless spirits, these emotional echoes that suggest something. Unsettled is lurking within the manor's walls.
Meanwhile, Alex is busy running around with his EMF reader, trying to find rational explanations for everything.
Every spectral moan that Talia perceives is met with a logical counterargument from Alex. Faulty wiring, drafts, the power of suggestion. It's almost comical, this constant back and forth between the spectral and the scientific.
It's like a battle of the paradigms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how limited each approach can be when you're dealing with the fundamentally unexplained.
How so?
Talia's intuition, while powerful, lacks that empirical validation that Alex craves. He needs data, measurable proof. And on the flip side, Alex's instruments can only measure certain kinds of energy, right? So it's entirely possible that he's missing other phenomena, things that simply don't register on his very material scientific radar.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's a classic case of can't see the forest for the trees.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Each of them is so focused on their own way of perceiving the world that they're potentially missing the bigger picture. But then the story takes us to the attic of this manor, and things start to change.
The attic, of course. That's where all the good spooky stuff always happens.
Right. And what happens in that attic is something that even Alex, with all his skepticism and scientific gadgets, can't easily dismiss. The EMF reader doesn't just, flicker or spike. It wails. And there's this sudden pressure in the air, this palpable heaviness that goes beyond just a cold draft. It's as though the environment itself is reacting to something.
And how does Talia react to all of this?
Well, what's really interesting is that Talia, who's usually so quick to offer her insights, she falls silent. The story describes her as being intensely focused, almost as if she's trying to process something overwhelming.
It sounds like their individual experiences are starting to converge.
Yes, exactly. Something is happening in that attic that's affecting both the physical, measurable realm that Alex is attuned to and the psychic, emotional realm that Talia inhabits.
So what do they find? What's causing this strange phenomenon?
After careful investigation and a lot of, I imagine, heated debate between them, they uncover something pretty fascinating. It's not a traditional ghost, not a spirit with a personality or a story to tell.
What is it then?
It's an anomaly, a powerful spike of electromagnetic energy. And what's really strange is that this energy spike is somehow linked to this very old photograph that they find hidden away in the attic.
A photograph? Of what?
It's a picture of a young soldier from maybe a century ago. And the story emphasizes how terrified he looks, his face frozen in this expression of pure, unadulterated fear.
So it's not the photograph itself that's causing the disturbance, but the emotions captured within it.
Exactly. It introduces this really compelling idea that intense human emotions, especially traumatic ones, can somehow not imprint themselves on a place. They leave behind this echo, this energetic residue that can linger for, well, potentially centuries.
So it's not a conscious haunting, but more like a recording of the past etched into the environment itself.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And this discovery, it has a profound effect on Alex, the physicist. Now, it's not that he suddenly starts believing in ghosts, but it does challenge his very rigid, very scientifically grounded worldview. He begins to consider that maybe, just maybe, there are things in the universe that science hasn't quite caught up to explaining yet.
It's like the data is forcing him to expand his definition of what's possible.
Exactly. He's still a scientist at heart, but he's starting to understand that the scientific method, while incredibly powerful, isn't always enough to fully grasp the complexities of reality, of existence.
And what about Talia? How does this discovery affect her?
Well, for Talia, it's a validation of her intuitive understanding of the world. She's always sensed these emotional echoes, but now she has a concrete, measurable phenomenon to back up her experiences. And it seems to strengthen their partnership, too.
How so?
Well, their arguments don't completely go away, I imagine they still have their fair share of debates and disagreements. But the nature of those arguments changes.
In what way?
They become more of the story uses the word calibration. It's as though they're learning to fine-tune their individual approaches to combine their strengths.
So it's less about proving each other wrong and more about trying to understand the phenomenon from both perspectives.
Exactly. Talia identifies the patterns, the when and where these emotional echoes, and Alex tries to find the physical basis for those patterns, the how and why. They're both still driven by their individual passions, but they're learning to work together to view the spectral through this kind of combined, almost scientific lens.
That's a really interesting dynamic. So do their investigations continue?
Oh, they do. The story mentions them going to other locations, places with strong emotional resonances, train stations heavy with the echoes of missed departures and tearful reunions, abandoned forts still reverberating with the fear and adrenaline of past battles. Their work becomes this ongoing exploration of the unseen emotional landscape that's layered over our everyday world.
They become chroniclers of these emotional echoes, mapping the unseen history that clings to certain places.
That's a great way to put it. And what's really heartwarming is that beneath the surface of their investigations, a personal connection begins to develop between them.
That makes sense. They're spending all this time together dealing with some pretty intense stuff.
Right. And I think it goes deeper than just shared experience. Talia, with her gift, which can be overwhelming at times, It can be very isolating to be so sensitive to the emotions of others, even those long gone.
So she finds a grounding force in Alex's scientific approach.
Exactly. His focus on data and measurement provides a sense of stability, a way for her to process and understand the often very chaotic influx of psychic information she's bombarded with.
And Alex, in turn, he benefits from Talia's empathy and insight.
Absolutely. The story hints that Alex, despite his outward cynicism, is carrying some deep-seated fear and loneliness, things he's probably never really confronted. And Talia, with her ability to sense those hidden emotions, she sees him, really sees him in a way that no one else ever has.
And that creates a very special bond between them.
It does. The story illustrates this beautifully through these really small, almost insignificant moments. Like there's one scene where Alex's precise calculations, his scientific focus, it provides a kind of refuge for Talia, a momentary respite from the intensity of the echoes.
And conversely, there's a moment where Alex's instruments register something truly inexplicable, something that defies all his scientific understanding. And in that moment of uncertainty, Talia offers him this silent, unwavering support. She doesn't try to explain it away or offer any grand pronouncements. She's just there with him, acknowledging the mystery.
And that's ultimately what their work becomes about, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
less about proving or disproving the existence of ghosts and more about this act of bearing witness.
Bearing witness to the mysteries that lie at the intersection of the measurable and the unfathomable, bridged by their own hesitant trust and their growing unspoken understanding.
Beautifully said. They might not have all the answers, but they're willing to face the unknown together, to acknowledge the complexity of what lies beyond our current comprehension.
It's a really powerful message, and it speaks to the heart of what we do here on the Mary Potter podcast.
Exactly. It's about exploring the magical and the mysterious, not necessarily to find definitive answers, but to spark our imaginations and challenge our assumptions.
So, listeners, we hope this magical probe into these flash fiction stories has, hopefully it's gotten you thinking about, the unseen forces that might be all around us, the echoes of the past that linger in unexpected places. What stood out to you in these tales? What questions linger in your mind about the nature of magic, echoes, or even the possibility of imprints from the past? Consider how the lingering unease in the Warlock city might connect to the subtle shifts the physicist observed. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other kinds of echoes might be all around us, just waiting to be discovered?
Perhaps there's a bit of the echo hunter in all of us, a desire to uncover the hidden stories, the whispers of the past that linger in the present.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Mary Potter podcast and leave us a review.
We'd love to hear your thoughts and theories about the magical mysteries we've explored.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those wands at the ready.
And never underestimate the power of an echo. Sometimes it's the faintest whispers that tell the most profound stories.
See you next week.
Farewell, fellow magical explorers.